Hello and welcome to the first Dragonheart in weeks. We've had a very, very busy schedule over the last couple of weeks, so apologies that we've been a bit, what's the word? Invisible?
Well, we've been carrying out undercover work. I mean, those spy balloons don't launch themselves, so, you know, it's a bit sensitive, but I've got cream and it's okay now.
Well, on that note, today we're going to be talking about a few different subjects. We've got the last night's game against Woking to talk about. There is an interview with the Athletics' new Wrexham journalist, which is actually really exciting for us, isn't it, as a club to have, at our level, to have a journalist from that publication, Richard Sutcliffe. And we've got a few other little things to mention. This is Dragonheart.
I'm Aaron Hayden, and this is Dragonheart.
A set piece then for Woking to use.
Oh, there's a corner, sorry.
And Wrexham have pulled everyone back except Mullen, who's only 30 yards out in his little half and half place. Josh Casey has taken it. Oh, beg your pardon, it's James Daly. Sweeps it into the near post, headed across the face of goal and in, and Woking take the lead in the 7th minute. They're a difficult team, and there you go. They've proven it. They've roughed Wrexham up a bit, but the first time they've come forwards, they take the lead. Classic near post corner, flicked on, headed in far.
Then nobody picked him up on the back post, so they had a free header. Yeah. Keeper didn't have a chance. Working Sheffield United here.
Corner swept to the near post, touched on nicely, easy, unmarked free header at the far post, and Hammond has got another goal to add to his collection. Toza plays it short, Lee now in a bit of space, 30 yards out on the right, sweeps in the cross, it's a decent one, but it carries through to Mullen, who's forced away from goal, edge of the box, he turns, beats his man, can he hit it? He beats another, he's tripped, free kick about a step outside the box, excellent work by Mullen that.
Yeah, he beat 3 or 4 players then, didn't he?
He was surrounded by players, wasn't he? It was so crowded. And he managed to wriggle his way through. Woking are complaining, but it was a foul, clear foul. He was mistimed, legged him over. And this is about a foot outside the box in the D.
Maybe a bit close.
Yeah, it's just one of those, blast it for power, and if it takes a deflection, hope it flicks on, and the keeper's got no chance, isn't it? So, Wrexham battling hard, 1-0 down against a well-organised,
well-drilled,
yeah, really strong Woking team. You know, Woking have been in and out of this division since we came into it. They're going down and up again. And frankly, this is by far the best Woking team that I've seen.
Yeah.
Of course, their manager, Darren Sarll, the last manager to have won at the racecourse in the league, with Yeovil last October. Here's the free kick. Ford and Young are on it. And Cannon is there too. Ford steps up and drills it. Yes! Yes! What a goal! By Anthony Ford! He tore it into the top right corner, and that brilliant work by Mullen has been rewarded. Ford steps up, lovely strike.
What a
it was
free
too
kick!
close.
Yeah,
Well,
I thought it was too close, but he got it up and over that wall.
Brilliant, brilliant free kick by Anthony Ford.
Superb, superb. That was Ronaldo-esque.
Fabulous, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Ronaldo didn't score that many, I reckon. That was more of a Messi.
Or Messi or a Gareth Bale, or
he hooked it.
Oh.
And how he managed to bring it down in time, I don't know, but that is an utterly glorious goal by Anthony Ford. As he throws it towards Mullen. Mullen can't get there. Ford gets it, nutmegs his man, drills it in. Hits the back of McNerney's head, and fans shout for handball. Wrexham pick up the second ball and start again. Lennon stepping out from the back. Good ball.
Great
Punches
ball
into
to
Mendy.
Mendy.
Sets himself. Feeds it in the box. Left-hand side. Palmer cuts inside. That is a penalty.
Yes, come on.
Brilliant move. Sharp passing. Lennon pinged it with pace. Mendy worked it inside. And it was a clumsy tackle. Woking are complaining. I mean, I'm absolutely certain Palmer walks into that leg and bought the penalty. But why wouldn't you when a defender has stuck his leg out like that?
Yeah, of course.
It was naive defending.
You see it week in, week out.
No question Palmer played for it, but equally no question that it's a penalty for me.
But slick passing.
Super, wasn't it?
That was you know, that's how that penalty was, Mendy out, and he took on the player, great ball in to Palmer's feet, and Palmer was turning, and he just put his leg out, and Palmer went over. I like Mr. Mullin.
To Mullin to take. Remember what happened at Sheffield United? The goal scored one, missed
Mark,
one.
Mark.
Like I mentioned it, he scored one and missed one. He has the ball spotted up. Ross waits on the line. Mullin takes a deep breath on the edge of the area. Steps up, right-footed. Scores!
Yes!
Right
Come
in the
on!
corner. Mullin drills it in. And Wrexham have taken the lead. This is such a test for Wrexham. But they have shown today that desire, that grit to fight and pull themselves back into a match that has been a real challenge.
And that is what's so good about this team, the desire to get back in the game, the never say die attitude that we've got. Yes, they've been both from set-piece goals, but does it matter?
Absolutely not. Doesn't matter how you score,
no.
Once you score. As the throw-in's taken, cross comes in nastily, but Daly can only head it up in the air. He's chasing it, but he's shoved. Well, I thought he shoved Jones over, but it's a throw-in given to Woking as it bounced off Jones's body as he hit the ground, and they've taken it quickly. It's a nice little triangle. Daly smashes it in the goal mouth. Tosin as well to get there. Then Daly goes down and gets a penalty. Oh, that's a soft decision.
No, referee.
Well, that's very controversial, that. I mean, firstly,
what's he giving that
it
for?
looked like a foul. Well, Daly 50-50. He went down, but for me, I'm not convinced that was enough to be a penalty.
Not at all.
He was playing for it. I think he managed. He tried to get there first and hit the deck, but the pen is given. But firstly, was it a throw or a free kick to Wrexham?
It was a free kick to Wrexham.
I thought so. That was taken very quickly. They worked the triangle beautifully, and so now it's a penalty which Brownlow will take. He stutters, steps up, and scores. And Woking pull themselves back into this game.
Hi guys, I'm Dominic Vose and this is Dragonheart.
The Woking game, Mark. I mean, it's been pretty. Let the viewers behind the curtain a little bit. We tend to record on a Tuesday, sometimes on a Monday. We've both had a lot of work-based stuff going on Mondays recently, which has made it difficult. Tuesdays have been full of games, and last night's was a big one that disappointed a little bit, but I think we need to put it into perspective, don't we, as a result?
100%. We have won every home game bar one, and it's nearly the end of February. That is amazing. So yeah, I think the fact that we've actually failed to win a home game, I think it says where we're at, that we feel a little deflated by the fact, that the idea of a 100% home season is gone now. My disappointment actually doesn't stem from the performance or necessarily from the results. My disappointment stems from the fact that I think their penalty is extremely generous to them. Don't get me wrong, I think they had a game plan which they executed to perfection. We failed to impose our style on the game. That's what it's always about, isn't it? When you play these long ball teams, you've got to nullify them and play it your way. We didn't manage to do that, so they deserved at least a point out of the game, no question.
Yeah, absolutely. I think compared to other teams that we played this season, they are the perfect example of that long ball National League side, and they execute their game plan perfectly. Usually you'd see teams come to the racecourse, perform really well for a half and then eventually tire, but and we'd get that breakthrough, or maybe if we were already 1-up, we'd then go and get another 2 or 3 goals afterwards, but they were just that little bit better than our other opposition, and I don't think we were able to break them down, and maybe we tired ourselves a little bit towards the end as well, I think.
I think as well, it's the fact that when you play that sort of game where it's all about breaking play up, getting set pieces, creeping up the pitch, fighting for the second balls like they did. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. I actually find it quite fascinating seeing us play against teams like that, because, like I said, it is all about who imposes their style on the game. But I think that in some ways, when people talk about, we've eased off because we've gone ahead or things like that, I think it's more who is on top of this. When Woking went ahead, they just carried on playing as they were, and they were on the front foot and they kept pushing us back. There were spells in the first half where we imposed ourselves, but we couldn't sustain it. And then, frankly, after our second goal, I don't think we did manage to do that. And although, it's tempting to say we just sat off and tried to protect a 2-1 lead, I don't think we did. I think it's just that they had imposed their style of play on us. We couldn't counteract it. Therefore, we ended up defending for the remainder of the match. And I've said this before, and I'm cliched, and I think it only makes sense in my head, but the Prime Minister in the 1930s, Stanley Baldwin, talking about why he backed appeasement, the bomber always gets through. And I always think of that phrase, Woking keep putting pressure on. They're not making chances, but there is always a chance that one of those long balls will just lead to a situation. I mean, how often have you seen teams that play like that and you think, they didn't create much, but they scored 2 goals though? That's a great example of it. They control how the game's played. They keep putting the ball in the correct areas, and ultimately something drops their way.
Yeah, exactly, and I think that's what happened, wasn't it? That first goal was, I kind of feel like 9 times out of 10 we defend that, but with a bit of a dishevelled defence, and it's not Phil Parker, it's not anyone's fault, but we've had to shift who's played in defence. Was it 4 or 5 games on the bounce now?
Yeah.
Trying to think, we were pretty settled before the Sheffield United home game, and then we've played. Oh, I've lost count, but yeah, it is about 4 games now where we played a different defence in every game, and when that happens, regardless of how individuals play, there's just going to be mistakes, isn't there?
And as well, and I'm not making excuses because, like I said, I thought Woking did really well and didn't deserve to lose it. Notwithstanding the fact that I thought their penalty was soft, but notwithstanding that, I think we were majorly handicapped in this game by injuries. And I know we've got quality and depth, don't get me wrong, but I think this is a specific type of challenge. And I think not having players like Sutcliffe and Hayden is a shame in this sort of game, because they are the sort of blokes who can dominate their part of the box and can plant headers on the halfway line and make sure that Woking aren't able to build pressure. And also, my suspicion, I could be wrong, but my suspicion is that O'Connor played at centre-back on Saturday because Wealdson are quick and we didn't need a big stopper, but that maybe he would, if he hadn't got injured, would have stepped into midfield yesterday. And again, he's not huge, but he can play at centre-back. He's good in the air, and he could do what Ince was doing for Woking in terms of he broke a lot up with headers, tackles, interceptions, and O'Connor can do that sort of thing. And also O'Connor helps us to shift the ball forwards accurately. That's not a criticism of Luke Young, who's playing in that role at all, but O'Connor is really suited to that, and I think we missed him quite a bit as well, personally.
Yeah, I think we missed O'Connor massively. He's been so important in that role, and Luke Young, who's barely put a foot wrong all season, has been asked to go back to a role that not only isn't really completely natural to him, but he hasn't played that role for quite a few games now. So for him to step back, he didn't have his best performance, I don't think, yesterday, but in fairness, he's got a lot to deal with there, plus with another new back three behind him. It was just one of those games, Mark, and I think any other season you're not complaining about that result whatsoever, but Notts County are so relentless, like ourselves, that suddenly draw into 3rd place at home after having won the previous 13 games now looks to some people like a disaster. Like a message to the Wrexham fans and community out there: don't lose your heads. A title challenge needs the fans to not lose their heads and get too agitated. That wasn't a bad result last night. Notts County they're not gonna win every single game between now and the end of the season. They're going to drop points. Let's just wait and see, I think.
With our games in hand, we still go above them.
Exactly.
And they've got to come to ours. And well done to them for digging in and getting results from adversity. But you can't keep doing that all the time, I don't feel. I still feel confident about this. And last night, like you said, is just 1 game out of 46. There's still a hell of a lot of football still to be played.
48 points left to play for. Yeah. And I think between us and Notts County, we're probably going to get the majority of that 48 points, but it's still a lot of games. They've been quite lucky with injuries compared to us. Yeah. They could go on a bad run of injuries, and have they got the squad depth that we've got? I don't know. They might step up. There's games that we were expecting them to maybe drop points, and they go and beat Barnet. Did it finish 4-1 in the end? Yeah, that's a good result for them, isn't it? And you've got to give them credit. But please people don't lose your heads. There's plenty of time yet. There's plenty of games to be played, and we still have to play them at home, and we've still got those 2 games in hand. I'm not too worried.
And to be fair, I think there's a difference between the online reaction and the in-stadium reaction. There were a couple of people booing behind us at the final whistle, and Neil was commentating. He immediately picks up on that and said how ludicrous it was, and it is ludicrous. But the thing about booing is that 2 or 3 people can do it, and it sounds like a lot of people are doing it. You know, in an echo of a stadium. The fans got behind the team well, I thought, and appreciated what was going on. And as I always say, the opposition is allowed to play well, and Woking did play very well.
Yeah, and. So for me, I went in the posh seats last night, so I went and experienced the hospitality. I'd highly recommend the 1864 suite for anybody. I think actually, you know, if you haven't got tickets and you're lucky enough to have enough money, it's a good route in because you get your pre-match meal and program and everything. Yeah, it was really nice experience. And Pete Jones said it best. all the new female fans that were in the 1864 suite because their fellas like me had taken their missus for a nice little Valentine's meal to the club. You know, fair play to them. But you know, if you're after tickets, that's probably definitely an avenue to consider. Not that I want to sound too much like a club shill, but
well, you know.
Put that out there.
Sitting there with his prawn sandwiches.
It actually is nice salmon. Nice bit of salmon, yeah, salmon. No, just salmon.
Salmon on its own.
Just a slab of salmon. Yeah. There you go. Pick it with your hands.
Kill it yourself. Fresh from the Gwenny.
Oh.
with the spoke of a shopping trolley in its mouth.
Caught up in a crisp packet.
What flavour?
Prawn cocktail.
Oh, Wrexham marinade.
But yeah, I thought the atmosphere was a little bit flat, but
yeah.
we've played so many games recently that I think fans are allowed to be fatigued as well.
Yeah.
You know, I thought against Wealdstone we might have that sort of like post FA Cup reaction, but I think yesterday was the post FA Cup reaction by the crowd. Really, it was seemed maybe it was just because where I was sat and I wasn't usually sat in my usual seats, but it seemed a bit muted to me.
It was a bit, I think, but I think it was also because Woking are the first team who've come to the racecourse and done that.
Yeah,
yeah. To be honest, over the 90 minutes, they are by far the only team who've looked like they deserved a point from the racecourse. I know teams have led us, but they're the first team I feel who've really gone there and merited that lead.
Yeah.
And frankly, when it was 2-2 and we were really struggling to get out of the box, it was a weird moment where it sort of just hit me. We could lose a home game here. And that's why, you know, if you strip out the context, I know that's a naive thing to say, but if you strip out the context and look at it, a game where you could lose, but you dig in and get the draw, is a good result.
Yeah, and to compare it to last season, Darren Saal, who's their manager, I believe was the Yeovil manager last year, wasn't he? They did a very similar job to that, didn't they? Yeovil came and did a very similar job to that last year and beat us.
Yeah, last team to beat us in the league at the racecourse.
Yeah, so all credit to him. You know, his style of football definitely has some effectiveness against Phil Parkinson. Obviously, we did beat Woking away at the start of the season. I remember saying on Dragonheart that's going to look like a good 3 points by the end of the season when a lot of people were disappointed. And actually, it's proven to look like a better 3 points than even I was expecting it to look like, really. They're going to be right up there at the end of the season. A 2-2 draw against a team that are that end up being in the playoffs is you know, there's no shame in that whatsoever. But I think, you know, in terms of going back to the atmosphere slightly, people, I'm not blaming anyone. It's not. It is what it is. But they see a name like Woking and don't actually look at the context of how they're playing at the moment.
That could be true. I think. Yeah.
You know, if we'd have drawn 2-2 with Chesterfield, who are actually slightly lower in the table, people might have been a bit less bothered. But because it was Woking, there was that element of, oh, God, should have beaten these. We've got more money than these. We've got this and that than these. But they're good football inside, and we've got to respect them, haven't we?
Oh, totally. Like I said, Sal's a good manager. He gets teams organised, and the fact of the matter is, yeah, they're sort of quite one-dimensional in how they play, but that style of play is well ingrained. They know what they're doing, and they're exceptionally effective. You know, they won 3-1 at Chesterfield last week. You know, they looked poor against Boreham Wood on Saturday and came back from 2 down and still drew. This is a side that has got resilience and quality and a clear idea of how it's supposed to play. And they're a good side, and I'd rather be beaten. And like I said, I think the penalty's soft. So we could have beaten them, but we wouldn't have necessarily been the better side.
Yeah,
frankly.
Yeah. And you know what, like, not that we've not mentioned the dreaded playoffs too much, but if we were to come across them in the playoffs, I would be concerned. I think that's a game that I wouldn't like to have if we can avoid it.
Yeah, it'll be a tough proposition, and Boreham Wood are sort of similar, and they are reclimbing the table, aren't they?
Yeah.
I used to have access to the full 90 of all the games, and I don't anymore, but I managed to get access to the Boreham Wood Woking game. I thought, right, okay, I'll just have a quick skip through it. And it was quite funny because I kept like sort of hitting, I was watching it on my laptop and hitting the sort of jump 30 seconds button, or I just jumped 5 minutes just to get a sense of what was going on. And the ball was constantly out of play. Every random point I picked, because both sides were knocking it long, trying to win set pieces, trying to break play up. And it was just every time I jumped anywhere, free kick, throw in, goal kick, corner. So constantly, if I had the time or the stupidity, and I have neither, despite what you might think, I would have timed how long the ball was in play in that game, because I'm telling you, it wasn't very long. I promise you that.
Just the thing is, you just got to contend with teams like that, haven't you? It's just the nature of this division. That there are teams that play to spoil the party, and I think a lot of people see that as a negative. I mean, if I was a Woking fan, I'd be delighted.
Yeah.
A few Sheffield United fans had a bit of a comment on Twitter about how the way we play is not going to look good, and you're going to eventually get bored of it. I don't care. I mean, I don't agree, but I also don't care. I will happily watch Toes' long throw for the rest of my life if we keep winning the way that we've been winning. You know, it's who cares? I'm not one of those football fans that's a purist. If we win, that is it for me.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
the only thing that's important.
Well, I mean, I think you're quite naive if you are a purist in a way. I have ways I like to watch football being played, don't get me wrong, but there's plenty of different ways to win a football match. And I gotta say as well, I mean, you're right. A few people talk like that about us being direct or not much fun to watch because of Toes' throws. But we're not a long ball team at all by any stretch of imagination. We play really nice football, some fabulous football, and you see Lee combining with players. Just because we also use a long throw is genuinely, you know, if you categorise a team, they must be Route 1 because they've got a long throw, you really don't understand football on a very fundamental level, I would argue.
I completely agree, and actually, last night, without Tom O'Connor in midfield, we reverted to long ball a lot, and that's probably one of the worst we played all season, probably the worst we played all season at home at least anyway, so it just goes to show that that's not our usual tactic, and we do punt it up every now and again, but it was relentless last night. It just wasn't sticking, was it? I don't think, really.
I mean, if Sheffield United fans think that, they really didn't watch both games, because whereas I'm not disputing Sheffield United deserved to go through because they were more efficient in both penalty areas, or certainly attacking.
Yeah.
But in terms of balance of play, I'd say over the two games, Wrexham were better than Sheffield United. We had more of the game over the two matches, and when you look at the way we were counter-attacking at Bramall Lane on the floor, so when you watch that, you think, the long ball, look at how that lad Mendy's just run 30 yards with the ball and outpaced our fullback. Aren't they long ball? You know, just talk me through that, please. It is quite startling how many people watch loads and loads of football and genuinely don't understand it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to be sarky about that, but just... So, you know, it's plain as nose in your face. Look at this. Look at it.
It's symptomatic of all fan bases, though, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
You know, I think a lot of it's the fun thing to do on Twitter to call one fan base deluded and one fan base not deluded. Like I'm sad enough to have spent enough time on football Twitter that I know it's every fan base that has deluded fans and every fan base that has non-deluded fans. It's just part and parcel of it, really, isn't it?
Yeah. I think I said to you years ago when I had to have a throat operation, I couldn't commentate for a bit, and I watched the game in the Mull Road stand, and it was Wrexham against Solihull before Solihull came up in the trophy.
Right. And
we had Ogilvy up front, and he got a really nasty head injury. I funny thing I said this last week or something now. I apologise. And he got a really nasty head injury and had to go off after about 10 minutes. And so we had Ormerod on his own up front, who of course was not, a good player, but not tall and not physically strong. And every time we got the ball in midfield, it'd just be Ormerod up front, being marked by Liam Hogan, who was like a sort of bus, if you can imagine that. Turned into human form, and all the people around me were screaming, "Stick it on his head! Stick it on his head!" And I said, Why would you hit a long ball at Ormerod? What would he do?
Yeah, why would you do that anyway? Never
I mean,
mind if it's
anyway,
defending,
yeah, exactly.
attacking against a
Yeah.
bus, you know.
And it was quite sort of Damascene moment for me, and sort of sitting there thinking, they think just the closer you are to the goal, the better off you are.
Yeah.
Well, not when you're hitting it for a big centre back to head it to the halfway line. So I used to play sometimes with my mates when I was a kid. I used to play cricket, and I liked cricket, and none of my mates did really. And so they'd be bowling all over the place. And how are you batting? And if they bowled one that was on target, they'd get dead excited. And I was just, oh good, they've bowled one I can actually hit. You know, but they'd go, oh, look at that, who's hitting the stumps there? And they say, yeah, no, go fetch it. Weird.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of those things, isn't it? Football's a funny game, and football fans are even funnier to a degree. Yeah. Owen O'Connell, though, I think I'd personally single him out as a performer yet again. How did you find he's been playing recently? We haven't really had much chance to talk about it on Dragonheart, have we? No.
Absolute class act. I mean,
yeah.
I feel, and I've got no reason, no proof for this, but he feels to me like the sort of player that we were looking to bring in the summer if we got promoted, and the injuries to Sutcliffe and Hayden meant we had to accelerate that. Yeah. I'm not saying we tapped him up or anything, but just that he was like, that's a priority player to go for, because O'Connell is Football League ready. He fits the profile of the best signings we've had. He's experienced at Football League level. He's a real unit. Yeah. Defensively, he and Tunnicliffe are similar, I think, in the way that they're not super quick, but they're massively strong in the air. They're massively strong in the tackle. And actually, O'Connell is very good with the ball at his feet. I like the way he brings it out. I like the way he passes it. I think he's an absolute class act, O'Connell. I'm thrilled that we got him. I must say, he did very well for Wrexham in Football Manager for me. That was in League One, actually. So I actually bought him before Parky did. I'm sure he hacked into my game to go for him. I'm certain.
It's always nice when that lines up with that, isn't it? When you've signed someone on Football Manager and they end up sort of being related to the club somehow.
Well, years ago, I got Genie Van Aldem when he was like a teenager playing for, I don't know, AZ Alkmaar or Fire, I think it was. Yeah. And he was like a teenager and he was fabulous. And I'm thinking, that kid's going to go places. And then for a while, it all went a bit quiet. And when he went to Newcastle, I was like, that's interesting. And next thing you know, he's winning Champions Leagues, and you think. Yeah. And then leaving Liverpool, and they don't look the same, and you think, yeah, I was right.
Or the other one I sort of love-hate is when you've got a real life player who kicks off on Football Manager with you, and you somehow hold that like unreasonable grudge with them in real life, even though they've done absolutely nothing to you. You're like suddenly developing a hatred for James Jones because he asked for a bit more money on Football Manager. Someone who in real life probably would never kick off. He seems like a lovely bloke. You know?
My son, he doesn't do this so much now, but he used to have the habit of suddenly, because he's all over everything. He's quicker than me spotting stories on social media. And usually I find out Wrexham stuff because he's told me. And he used to have the habit of announcing something. I went, what? Seriously? They've signed him? And it was in his game, wasn't it? We've signed that centre back from Dover. And I went, what? He's a good player, him. That's a hell of a sign. We did that. And he said, in the game. And I was like, oh man. I've got so excited so often over stuff that's happened on his laptop. Honestly, you wouldn't believe it. Milanese, he was a good centre back for me for Inter Milan. That must have been, Inter Milan. It was no such thing as Inter Milan. I'm sorry. That was that had been early 2000s. A cracking team. Rick Hober playing behind the strikers. What a player! Oh my gosh. We may have gone slightly off the point.
Slightly off the point.
I want to talk more about it though. That's the worrying thing, isn't it?
Maybe one for the summer when we've got nothing to talk about.
Yeah.
Have a Football Manager Dragonheart based
I think
episode.
we probably should get Tim Lewis back on.
He's the man. He's the man. Football Manager. Yeah, fair play.
Well, we did have an idea. Should I say it out loud?
Yeah, go on.
We had an idea for maybe having some sort of Football Manager tournament where we had the 98-point team, the 77, 78 team, the current team, have little mini tournaments and see what happens.
It'd be interesting. Let's wait and see if we've got a promotion-winning team at the end of this season to throw in the mix with that.
Oh, yeah. Nice idea.
But speaking of which, we win these 2 games in hand that we've got. I know that's a lot easier said than done, but we go back top of the table. The idea that Notts aren't going to get injuries and aren't going to drop points is frankly ludicrous, and we've just got to be patient, I think, haven't we?
Yeah, and that 100% correct. They're going through their spell of squeaking wins, and good luck to them. Well done. But my logic is that you look at the players we got and the squad that we've got, the remarkable run of results we're on. We should be, really, because we have got a League One squad. With the best will in the world. I'm not trying to be sarcastic or demeaning in any way, but Notts County have not had our budget boost, and as you rightly say, I don't think they have the same depth in their squad, and so for me, what they're doing is outstanding, but they are extending themselves. They are overreaching themselves and overperforming, whereas we are performing at par. Now, to me, that says logically it makes more sense that we continue like this to the end of the season, and that logically they at some point will not be able to perform above par. I hope I'm right, but that's my sort of reading of it.
I think as well, on top of that, if Owen O'Connell is the type of profile of player we can bring in, there's nothing stopping us going and getting one or two more players before the end of our transfer window to sort of get us over the line. I think Andy Cannon at times looked really good last night. We only brought him in December. He's clearly not quite fully fit, but once he's ready, that's another player that we've got on our hands that could really make a difference.
Jordan Davis will hopefully be back fairly soon.
Yeah, hopefully. Hayden and Sutcliffe to eventually come back as well. So let's get February out of the way. I think we'll know by the end of this month where the lay of the land is, and I think we'll be all right.
It's amazing, isn't it, when you think of the players who are either out injured at the moment or are maybe lacking a bit of match fitness. They would make a side, or would be certainly straight into. They'd make a side that is much stronger than most teams we've had in the National League years. I mean, think of the quality. Or if you added them to it, you'd be doing a huge boost. I mean, Leighton, for a start. Hull Johnson and Bryce Susanna are both a bit undercooked. McFadden wasn't fit last night. You've got Hayden, you've got Tunnicliffe, you've got Jordan Davis, you've got Cannon, who's lacking match fitness. I mean, wow. I mean, that's a lot of huge quality.
Harry Lennon would have come into some of the teams we've had in the conference and become captain, wouldn't he? But he's probably not going to get inside when everyone's match fit.
Yeah. What do you think of him last night? Because he clearly wasn't going to have 90 minutes in him.
It was. I think it was a tough night for him. I don't think he did anything outwardly really wrong, other than you could just tell he was lacking that bit of match sharpness. And he didn't look like that against Sheffield United. But in fairness, you're only human. Playing Woking is not the same as being at Bramall Lane playing Sheffield United, and you might step up a gear in that sort of atmosphere, mightn't you? I think he played well, considering, and he's got to be given time to get back to full match fitness.
Yeah. People ask all the time me about what I think of him, and it's like, if he's fully fit, he's an absolutely outstanding centre-back who shouldn't be at our level, just like a lot of our players.
Yeah.
He's a tremendous player, and it's great that we gave him the contract. In the old days, before the takeover, we wouldn't have been able to afford to give him a contract of previous fitness.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful for us that we can do that. He had a bit of a rough time yesterday at times, especially with the ball at his feet, which is very unlike him, because he's very good with the ball at his feet, isn't he? But, like you say, when you're out of match practice and you're facing that sort of challenge, it's difficult.
Yeah.
And Woking are, Sheffield United in terms of quality are better, fine. But Woking are a different type of challenge, and it was just I think tricky for him to fully get into the swing of that aggressive style of play, if I'm honest.
Yeah. And that's when you're coming back from match fitness, playing in a really aggressive in-your-face team like that is going to be harder to play against than a team who will sit off you and give you a bit of space on the ball and the time to acclimatise to the tempo of the match. So, a tough game, but Aldershot on the weekend. We go there. They're on a little bit of a decent run of form by all accounts, aren't they? But we're generally the form busters for a lot of teams, aren't we? Or we have been. So hopefully we'll go there and get a win. Who have we got on the Tuesday after that?
Scunthorpe.
So that's a game that you'd like to think we could target as a win as well. And then it's onwards and upwards from there, really, Mark.
Dorking on the Saturday, then another that's 3 home games in a row, then that Chesterfield game.
Yeah.
Let's hope they continue their current form. That wouldn't hurt us.
Certainly wouldn't. Anyway, after this, we're going to have that aforementioned interview with Richard Sutcliffe.
I'm Harry Lennon, and this is Dragonheart.
I think because we've got company, I've been on my best behaviour in the first half. That's what it is. I've been all polite and that, you know. So I don't know. But anyway, let's take advantage of our company then, because as Pamela RWK rightly says, and Richard, you're going to be delighted by this. He says, "Yay, Richard Sutcliffe for the Athletic will be in the booth of Mark Griffiths to hear the voice of Wrexham in person. I might be the voice of Wrexham, but Neil is the insert noun here of Wrexham."
The what, sorry?
Insert noun here. I don't know what.
Okay.
I didn't know what to say. I thought.
No.
I don't want you to say I was bullying
I thought you were going
like
to say
you
I'm
did
the
on
man from
Saturday.
Whitchurch who travels over here because they've got no electricity, you know, like you normally do. So
I do say that, don't I? Yeah. But that's a
to
fact.
charge
isn't
my
it?
phone and yeah.
That's just a factual comment.
Well, very true.
Yeah, absolutely. When you use your mobile phone in Whitchurch, do people shout witchcraft and start setting fire to pitchforks and stuff?
Maybe.
Fair play.
Maybe.
As you are a photographer,
Yeah.
do they think you're stealing their souls?
That's funny because we have one customer who thinks we scan them as they come in through the shop.
Scan them?
Yeah.
Whoa. for the chip that was put in their arm and their COVID vaccine, I assume.
Well, I don't know, yeah.
Gosh. Well, Pamela says, so glad you two got to meet. So, on Valentine's Day, hello, Richard.
Hello there.
It's an absolute pleasure to meet you, although we
Likewise.
have met before.
We have.
But let's pretend, for the sake of Pamela's imagination, let's pretend it's the first time we've met. I've got to say, I mean, I love The Athletic because it has a commitment to long-form writing and to actual thoughtful writing, which, sadly, a lot of written media is moving away from now. And to actually have an Athletic correspondent, I've got to be honest with you, is absolutely fabulous. And so I guess I've got to ask you first. I mean, Richard, how did that come about, and how did it become you?
Well, yeah, I suppose it's the ultimate case of follow the story. I came here, what was it now? It feels like about 3.5 months ago, but I think it was only about a fortnight. I arrived here as the Sheffield United correspondent for the FA Cup tie. Obviously, incredible game, fantastic stuff, really was. I was here with my colleague Stu James as well. And obviously, I spoke to Phil Parkinson during the week because I've known Phil a long time. So I've done a piece on him. Stu did a colour piece around it. And it just showed us there's something really special happening down. Obviously, I'd watched the documentary all the way through. A lot of it because obviously I've known Parky and Steve Parkin and Sean Harvey from Bradford as well. So you know these people. So you know, it's interesting when you can see them at work, so to speak. And then it was the day after the Sheffield United game, my boss rang up and he says, "What are you up to?" And obviously you're supposed to say, "Oh, I've got loads on," but I couldn't think of anything I was actually doing. So I says, bits and pieces. He says, "Right, I want you to go to Wrexham for the month, home and away. I want you to tell the story." They've got 8 games. Tell the story through different characters, you know, whether it's fans, players, managers, whoever, and we'll see how it goes. And obviously 2 weeks in, it's going really well because I'm staying. My loan's been extended by work, so you're stuck with me now till well, hopefully for the foreseeable.
Excellent. So we're very happy to hear that, you know, because it is wonderful. I like the fact that you are a fresh perspective, a fresh view on it, because, you know, I mean, in Wrexham, I'm being selfish and saying from Wrexham perspective, we hear lots of familiar voices, opinions on things, and we hear the repetition of the cliches, which are true of the fairy tale. It's true. Yeah. But I think to actually have somebody coming along looking at it with an impartial eye, but not with a cliched eye, because some people have come here, I'll be honest, as away reporters, and they tell me what's going on, and I just think, you really have no idea. It's really interesting and a privilege for us, I think. Yeah.
Oh, and actually, you know, like I say, I found the story fascinating anyway, through the documentary, and like I say, knowing the guys who are here. But you actually get here, and there's so much I just didn't know or realise. You know, I honestly had no idea that some of the community stuff, you know, phenomenal. You know, that you know, the 200 tickets to keep back each game for people who can't possibly afford, so they can come along. That doesn't happen in football. You know, I've been a football reporter 25, 26 years now, and that just doesn't happen anywhere. It doesn't, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. You know, everyone I speak to, it's just you can feel it's a town that's just it's excited. It feels alive, and you know, there's no better stories to cover than that.
Exactly, and both in terms of football and the town, it's wonderful to see that uplift, because there was a danger that it could get a bit toxic here. It was heading that way before the takeover started to happen. The town, I would say that Wrexham people had a fairly negative view of Wrexham in a way, and yet now the self-confidence, well, I say the town, the city now, the self-confidence of the city, the self-confidence of the Wrexham fans who didn't turn on Wrexham in the first half against Woking when it's not going their way. I think it's almost tangible in the air at the moment.
Sport's a wonderful thing for the civic pride. You know, my hometown's Keighley, and I only sort of moved 6 or 7 years ago, and it's coming up for 25 years ago since that. But rugby league, we had a fantastic team for 2 or 3 years. You know, we finished top of the second division, should have got promoted. Super League started, we didn't. It's a bit of an injustice in my mind. But what Keighley Cougars did for that town in 3 or 4 years, because they had like the community classroom. You know, they worked with the police, they worked on combating drugs, and you know, Keighley's a town like Wrexham, and it's hard times. It's, you know, it used to be a big cotton town. The mills have gone, the sort of derelict, but sport in the early to mid-90s gave it that pride back, and it was absolutely fantastic. And that's what sport does. I can see it happening here, and I think here though, the actual foundations there, Keighley wasn't. They got denied promotion, but the money then ran out and things went wrong, and the club sort of went this way and the other. But I see here, I can only see progress for, you know, years ahead really, because I see the enthusiasm the owners have got as well. I think that's the big thing.
Yeah, absolutely, and that stated desire to do things for the community as well as the club has really endeared them to the point where I think a lot of people are naturally cynical anyway these days. I think Wrexham particularly, because we've been through a lot as a town and a club, but there really hasn't been that sense of cynicism or concern about people coming from a different continent and doing this, because the way they've handled themselves, the way they've prioritised community as well as football club, I think has really spoken to the ordinary person on the street, I think.
It's almost, to me, it's almost like, and I use this word in a positive sense, a throwback, in the fact that when you used to get your owners of your football club were usually the local businessman done good, because it was men back then, let's be honest about it. And they did have that sense of community with them, whereas I say over the last sort of 30 years, you know, my previous job at the Yorkshire Post, I did 15 years, and there's some good owners in Yorkshire, but there's a hell of a lot of owners who came in wanting to do right things for the football club, but couldn't give two hoots about what's happening outside the front door of the club. And that, I'm not getting them, because they were coming from, you know, they might live 200 miles away, so they didn't have it. Obviously, Rob and Ryan live thousands and thousands of miles away, but they're coming at it from a different point of view, and that's what I mean, where it's almost that care that they've got. And you know, I think you've touched on it before, saying they don't describe themselves, or it might have been Neil earlier when I was talking to him, he's like, they don't describe themselves as owners, they're sort of custodians.
That's right.
And I know it's a cliche when I sometimes see people say, because you know, a PR company's actually said it, you know, I've seen these owners and they'll put the scarf on, or they'll do this, that and the other, but I just get the sense they mean it here. You know, like I say, it's a throwback to I think a better time for football and a better time for sport. And you know, I know the cynics out there, and you know, I cover Sheffield United, so I heard plenty of that cynicism last week with all that went on after the game. But I say to our people, I says, like, get beyond that, look at what's actually happening in this story, and I think you'd actually love it. And I think that's why the documentary's so good, because it's just opened the eyes of obviously the wider world. Obviously all the guys tuning in from wherever, you know, tonight to this game is fantastic. But I think everybody can see who takes the time to watch that documentary, because I find a lot of the people who criticise it have not seen 1 minute of it, because they've just made their mind up. You know, I see it in the comments at the bottom of my stories that I've written about Wrexham. It's like, oh, that's not a fairy tale, and you think, well, have a look a bit deeper, and you might see that actually this is a good news story, and good news stories, we need them at the moment.
Exactly. I mean, for what it's worth, having been in the club to an extent, you know, while it's being filmed, there's barely anything in the whole series that feels inauthentic to me. There's a couple of tiny bits, and I think, oh, I wonder. But generally, not at all. I've not seen people staging things, and I do think it's a genuinely cleverly told narrative. I think it's quite intelligent in the way that it lets you draw your own conclusions. When it talks about the hooligans, at first I was concerned, but I think it does allow you, I think it treats the viewer with credits a viewer, should I say, with enough intelligence to look at it and decide for themselves what they think about that. And I think that's been effective. And I've got to say, I mean, it's been phenomenal for me, because our Ask Wrexham hashtag was something which we brought in long before the takeover, and I love it. But there were some times when nobody, literally nobody, used it during a game. Now it's out of control, frankly. But not only that, you see the stories of people who say, I just saw the show, I don't like football, I don't really like sports, but it touched me and I'm into this. And the commitment of those fans and the really well thought through questions and points that they make, I mean, it's uplifting for me. I love this football club. I've been watching the club since 1978. I've never looked forward to games like I do now. It's an amazing thing. And it's that community again, though. You know, community doesn't have to be 1.5 miles from the stadium. Community's everywhere. And, you know, I follow your stuff. You know, they asked Wrexham. It's a community you've got there. You know, obviously we've done an interview for the Athletic for tomorrow, and I put to you, I said, what I've listened to and what I've followed, it feels like Test Match Special, you know, which is the cricket show on the BBC, which I absolutely love, because you get the irreverent stuff, you know, they're talking about the pies and the things like that, but you never miss a second of the match. And that's what happens with you guys. But that community, because you're not just talking about the football's important, but it's also, you know, people care what the pie you're going to have somewhere, or who can be an 11 of American presidents. You know, that brings people together. It does. It's a beautiful thing, and that's what I mean by the community. And I don't mean somebody who lives on the Mould Road or you know, has to get the number 23 bus to the game. I'm on about somebody who's following it from 3,000-4,000 miles away. And that's why I just think Wrexham's such a special club. Absolutely. Wonderful, wonderful. The number 23 just goes straight to Jamie Carragher's house, by the way. He doesn't catch the bus. No, he doesn't. He spat on one. No, did I say that? Oh dear. Oh no, I've crossed the line again. I'm remembering that Rolf Harris stuff we did last Saturday now, Neil.
Dear me.
That shouldn't have gone down there. Anyway, something I'd like to ask people. Just, to me, this business model that Rob and Ryan are bringing in, I can't think of anything quite like it. It's not that there's never been celebrity owners, but using their celebrity as currency, because you don't get TikTok on your shirts unless Ryan Reynolds is involved, for example. That really fascinates me, and I can't think of any real example of that. Can you at all? No, absolutely not. It's like, say, you get umpteen owners coming in and they'll put money in, like the guys have done. Well, you know, they'll emotionally invest as well. But it was interesting. I spoke to Sean Harvey for a piece a couple of weeks ago, and he said he didn't know who the identity of the owners were at the first when he was asked to look at it by the New York Bank. And he went back to this banker who was a good friend of his and said, this business model makes no sense whatsoever. They are going to lose money. Whatever they do, they're going to lose money. And they says, oh, don't matter, they're not bothered about losing money. And he's like, well, that's their choice. And then he found out what their plan was with the documentary and bringing in the global audience and the appeal. And it just made sense. And I think it just makes sense. I think it's amazing that nobody's thought of it before, and it's 2023. We all know Will Ferrell's going to buy Shrewsbury, don't we? I don't know. And on that bum note, thank you so much, Richard. That was an absolute pleasure. It really genuinely was. Enjoyed it. And you're more than welcome to chip in if you want to in the second half. I'm enjoying myself too much listening to you guys. You're under no obligation, I promise you.
I'm Luke Young, and this is Dragonheart.
Fantastic half-time interview, that, Mark. Interesting that the Athletic have picked us up as a team, isn't it?
Well, as you said, follow the story. I mean, is there a more exciting story in world football at the moment than us getting bought like this and us scaling up in this manner? I mean, I know a lot of people get upset when they see that people are jealous and fans complain, but a lot of fans just are loving it from other clubs. They really like the idea that we're a nice club and they wish us well, and now this has happened to us. So it's just a crazy story, isn't it? And he's loving it. He really is enjoying covering us, which is lovely to see. You know, he's really genuinely, like as he said, he's got an extension on the amount of time he's going to stay with us, because the Athletic can see it's a great story, and he's really enjoying himself, and he's come in and immediately has seen loads and loads of different fascinating threads to pick up.
Yeah, it's I bet, and I mean, like the media attention we're getting at the moment is for us and for teams in our division is completely unprecedented, isn't it? You know, the closest in terms of attention maybe might have been Salford previously, just because they had the documentary with Gary Neville and co. But before that, there'd have been no one. And I don't, no disrespect to Gary Neville, he's much more better known than I am, but he pales in comparison to Rob and Ryan, doesn't he? Yeah,
that didn't have the international heft. The documentary, I don't think, was particularly for the club's benefit, whereas Welcome to Wrexham is for our benefit.
Yeah.
And so there were a lot of different elements to it. Plus, as well, I mean, I watched the Class of '92 one. I don't want to sound funny saying this, but I didn't get any emotional connection to anybody, really. It was more an interesting documentary. A classic example of fly on the wall. I felt quite dispassionate watching it. Whereas you look at the comments of supporters who are new to the club, and they all say, Welcome to Wrexham is an emotional story about people.
Yeah.
And that's what hooks them in. It's a very different beast, isn't it? So Salford didn't get much traction out of that, really, did they?
No, I think they were more... hated is the wrong word, but I think they fall in that category of certain teams that suddenly become the pantomime villain for whichever division they're in at the time, or whoever they come across in cup competitions, which, you know, we'd have to be unrealistic to think that we're not kind of falling into that, but I think for the majority of people, we are fairly well liked, or at least respected to a degree. I saw an image that someone shared. Sorry, I can't remember who it was on Twitter, but it was funny. So if you're listening, it's Ace. It's like the cycle of people fuming about Wrexham. It was like neutral fan fumes about the media attention Wrexham gets. Media notice Wrexham getting loads of attention. More articles made about Wrexham, and it's like a cycle of like, you know, if you're that type of fan who's gonna be a bit bitter and complain about us, don't click on articles, don't engage with us on Twitter, just ignore it, because you're just gonna generate more attention for us. So and we win out of that because we probably make more money from clicks and everything. So
absolutely. My personal message to you is, haha, we are FC Clickbait.
but we have kind of become that, and what I love about the Athletic, I've been subscribed to them for a long time. Again, not just saying this is some sort of club shill or anything, but what they produce content-wise isn't clickbait, is it? It's informed journalism where, whether you like the journalist in particular that is writing, they are actually there doing a job. There's no adverts. It's all just straight to the point, what that journalist is actually trying to convey as a story, which is really great, isn't it?
And that long-form writing is fantastic. And, you know, to be frank, the Wrexham landscape, media-wise, is poorer because some very good journalists have left their jobs because they don't want to be churning out soul-destroying clickbait all the time. They want to actually be journalists in the club doing what Richard is doing. Because sadly, journalism generally is not going in the direction that the Athletic goes, but that's why it's so valued. I also have been subscribing it for a while. I was thrilled. I thought, oh, we're going to be one of those clubs. Oh my God, that's fantastic.
It's great, yeah, and it's no disrespect to any of the journalists that attend Wrexham games and are involved in the club in some capacity, because I think there is a place for what the Daily Post and the Lead are doing, summarising the stories into chunks that people can see and share easily. But, you know, it is just summaries of what's happening, whereas the Athletic just brings something completely different to the table, doesn't it?
And Rich and Tommy are brilliant, and they are really good journalists.
Yeah.
Sometimes they might have to comply with what their bosses tell them to do, quite frankly. But they are brilliant.
Yeah. I especially love the takeaway reviews that Tommy does.
Yes, absolutely.
I can't watch them too much though, because I don't want to. I've got enough pounds here anyway. I don't need to be getting any more recommendations on where to get my fish and chips from.
The Romanian butterfly, the great gymnast that I am. My body is a temple. Angkor Wat sinking into the ground.
Brilliant. On another note, before we wrap up as well, I seen a really interesting message on Reddit. A user who goes by her real name is Laura. She's sending us a Lego stand remade of the Macron Stand that she's done. Try and find it on Reddit. It looks amazing. She's very, very kindly sent it to us, and the kids in our school are going to, in the additional learning needs department, are going to rebuild that as a project, and it will go up in school. So thank you very much for that. But it's kind of wild, isn't it? People from the other side of the world sending us things for kids in our community to build and use.
Well, I mean, there's so many positive things from this. I mean, firstly, we're talking about a proper, amazing Lego model, like those amazing people who do that sort of stuff do. This is not just someone slapping something together. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Secondly, the fact that Welcome to Wrexham inspires people not just to be interested in us as a football club, but to be interested in us as a community is in some ways, I think, the best compliment that Rob and Ryan, and indeed the people who did such work before they came in, people in the trust who did an awful lot of stuff for the community, Kerry for the disabled supporters. You know, I think it's a real tribute to all of them that this is not about football, it's about a community around a football club, such as Richard, I can't remember if it was on or off camera, spoke very eloquently about, you know, that's what's fascinating. He's come in from outside and felt it's like, it's a whole town story, it's not a football story, and that's part of why he's so hooked by it.
Yeah.
And then, you know, in the Woking game, 3 Canadian fans came over to say hello. It was fantastic to beat them.
Yeah.
It's just wonderful to see this, and it's just lovely. And it's that big community. It's not just Wrexham. It's a massive online community. We try in Dragonheart in the commentaries and to create that community as well. And it's just lovely. It's nice.
And you see all the how well all the independent media are doing from it. The likes of Fearless in Devotion, they're massive now. Rob, Ryan Red, they're massive now, and they produce like amazing content for us that we didn't have pre-takeover. There's all sorts of accounts on Twitter. I'm not trying to purposely not mention anyone, but there's that many now. We'd be here for ages if we were talking about all the different podcasts and blogs and the journalistic side of things. It's unprecedented times, and and any neutral that is either a bit on the fence or a bit cynical about Wrexham, come to the town, come and see what it's done for us, come and have a look at how well the owners are respected and that positive impact that they've had, and you'd be amazed, honestly. But thank you to Laura and any other international fan that has interacted with us. It's still unprecedented for us, and it's really appreciated.
It's a genuine pleasure. It's wonderful. It's something I never imagined would happen. And it's just delightful.
It is. Right, well, I think that's a great time for us to wrap it up.
I got a free lesson next. I'm lucky.
Well, I've got the lovely year 10s, so they'll be all right.
It'll be fine.
Make sure to catch us on all the socials. Follow us all on Twitter. We haven't got everything to hand to remember everything, but more importantly, subscribe to us on YouTube, hit the bell and all that sort of stuff. Any extra shares and things we get for the club is always beneficial for us, so all that stuff is appreciated. This has been Dragonheart.
I'm Liam McClendon and this is Dragonheart.